surprises and is a seafood lover's paradise. Venture over to Anna Maria Island, a tucked-away, charming village where the paddleboarding scene offers yoga for the ultimate calming experience. Next, hop over to the breathtaking Robinson Preserve, a coastal wetland with 487 acres of natural habitat that's incredible for water activities, bird watching, sightseeing along endless boardwalks, and from atop the 40-foot-tall observation tower. Plan to stay a while to explore vibrant downtown Bradenton, with top-rated attractions for all ages, and a friendly community set along the Bradenton Riverwalk that welcomes you to the land of your heart's desire. With miles of waterfront trails and the family fun zone, take an eclectic turn to an artist's dream come true here in the Village of the Arts. But get ready to be amazed at the Bishop Museum of Science and Nature, specializing in the history of Florida's Gulf Coast. Say cheese! And make sure to check out the arts and culture scene with great galleries like Art Center Manatee with stunning exhibits. Come lose yourself here in the sun-drenched Bradenton area with hidden gems like Longboat Key and pristine beaches like Coquina Beach, where everyone finds their happy place. Wherever you go, beach paths lead to relaxation and warm Gulf breezes. It's time to change your reality here in the Bradenton area and discover Florida's West Coast. Learn more at BradentonGulfIslands.com. Welcome to the Bradenton area, where the easy pace of island life comes naturally with waves of serene beauty in this unspoiled paradise nestled along the Gulf Coast of Florida. Come immerse yourself in a coastal playground where miles of beaches let you disconnect from the world. When you're in the Bradenton area, come ready to discover places like historic Bridge Street with one-of-a-kind things to do. Lots of fun surprises, and is a seafood lover's paradise. Venture over to Anna Maria Island, a tucked-away, charming village where the paddleboarding scene offers yoga for the ultimate calming experience. Next, hop over to the breathtaking Robinson Preserve, a coastal wetland with 487 acres of natural habitat that's incredible for water activities, bird watching, sightseeing along endless boardwalks, and from atop the 40-foot-tall observation tower. Plan to stay a while to explore vibrant downtown Bradenton, with top-rated attractions for all ages, and a friendly community set along the Bradenton Riverwalk that welcomes you to the land of your heart's desire. With miles of waterfront trails and the family fun zone, take an eclectic turn to an artist's dream come true here in the Village of the Arts. But get ready to be amazed at the Bishop Museum of Science and Nature, specializing in the history of Florida's Gulf Coast. Say cheese. And make sure to check out the arts and culture scene with great galleries like Art Center Manatee with stunning exhibits. Come lose yourself here in the sun-drenched Bradenton area with hidden gems like Longboat Key and pristine beaches like Coquina Beach, where everyone finds their happy place. Wherever you go, beach paths lead to relaxation and warm Gulf breezes. It's time to change your reality here in the Bradenton area and discover Florida's West Coast. Learn more at BradentonGulfIslands.com.
In about 30 seconds, Dr. James, we can start.
Okay, welcome to the second day of our conference. I visited several sessions yesterday, quite a few sessions actually, and found excellent presentations. So I'm expecting just as good today. And yesterday's panel was outstanding. And we're about to go into our second panel that Jihan is the moderator of. So turn it over to him to introduce his panel members. So thank you for being here. Jihan, your show.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. James. I also would like to welcome all of you to our conference, the second day. We had a wonderful conference, first day yesterday. And for those of you who may have not see the panel that we have done about gender equity in academia, it is available on our YouTube website for the University of South Florida M3 Center. So feel free to go there, and we will also have the link on our website, glosser.org. Today, we have an excellent and amazing panel, which I have personally, I'm very passionate about for two reasons. One, of course, I'm an educator. I am very curious to see maybe in 15, 20 years, I should be looking for another job because my job will be replaced by a robot or something else. Or the other one is that my research area is technology, the use of technology in hospitality area, in the hotel, restaurant administration, etc. So for that reason, we are going to have an excellent panel today. As you have seen earlier, the title of the panel, The Impact of Artificial Intelligence and Robots on Education. I would like to thank all of our panelists for accepting our invitation and to be with us today. And I would like to introduce them one at a time, and then I will start with my questions. Of course, we want this to be as interactive as possible. We will be happy to take in your questions, and then we will do it. So I'll start with Dr. Chong Guan. Welcome, Chong. Very nice to have you here. Chong Guan is an associate professor in marketing and deputy director of the Office of Graduate Studies, Singapore University of Social Sciences, Singapore. Chong completed her PhD in marketing at Nanyang Business School, Nanyang Technological University, and her undergraduate studies in marketing at Guanghua School of Management, Peking University, China. Her research interests lie in the area of consumer decision-making on digital platforms. Her publications appear in leading journals such as European Journal of Marketing, Journal of Interactive Marketing, Journal of Business Research, Telecommunications Policy, Psychology and Marketing, and Database. She is an editorial board member of the Internet Research. Chong has taught various digital marketing courses at the undergraduate, graduate, and executive levels. She has consulted business practices and conducted corporate trainings and social media analytics, AI in marketing, and other emerging area. Chong, again, welcome to you.
Thank you.
And I would like to next introduce Dr. Rinat Rosenberg Kima. Dr. Rinat Rosenberg-Kima is the head of Mindful Learning Laboratories Lab in the Faculty of Education in Science and Technology at the Technion, Israel Institute of Technology. As I understand, this is the equivalent of MIT in Israel, where she also serves as the head of the Computer Science Education Program. Her research at the Mindful Learning Technologies Lab combines human-robot interaction, computer science education, and instructional design, with a particular interest in the relationships between mind, cognition, and affect. Rinat completed her BA in computer science and economics at Tel Aviv University, her MA in psychology also at Tel Aviv University, and her PhD in educational psychology and learning systems at Florida State University, which is our sister university. We are at University of South Florida, so happy to have that connection as well with her. Previously, she had led the analytics team in science education digital curriculum development project at the Lawrence Hall of Science, UC Berkeley. And Rinat, also welcome to you as well. And last but not least, I would like to introduce Mr. Daniel Schiff. Daniel Schiff is a PhD student, so soon to be a faculty member, hopefully, in the School of Public Policy at the Georgia Institute of Technology, where he studies the social, ethical, and policy implications of artificial intelligence. Previously, he has served as the Director of Research, Evaluation, and Planning at the Philadelphia Education Fund. Daniel studied philosophy at Princeton University, focusing on robotics and intelligent systems, before completing a master's in social policy at the University of Pennsylvania. He has published in venues such as AI and Society, IEEE Transactions on Technology and Society, the Journal of Engineering Education, the AMA Journal of Medical Ethics, and Nanotechnology. Daniel, also welcome to you as well. Very happy to have all of you in our panel. And I would like to start our panel by asking my panelists the question. You know, I teach technology, right? Usually when I start my classes, I ask the students, how do you define technology? If there are 40 students in the class, there are 40 different definitions. I would like to start with you the same question, not technology, but artificial intelligence. Chonk, let's start with you. How do you define artificial intelligence from your perspective? What is it in layman's term? Because this is not a technology conference, obviously it's education conference. So please tell us.
Okay, so the term AI, since its first coined in 1955, it has been given so many manifestations across the industries and sectors. While the main focus resides in the reasoning part, which is performed by a computer algorithms instead of human beings. So from a user's perspective, one of the most visible example that we interact with every day is the recommender systems. Usually is deployed on, for example, VOD platforms, video on demand platforms like Amazon's Prime Video and Netflix, right? These recommender engines make quick and targeted recommendation tailored to each of our customers' viewing history. In my field of research and consultancy, we mainly look into leveraging machine learning to generate business insights. Some application include NLP, natural language processing, in social listening and chatbots. We also have emotional recognition in advertisement testing, and also predictive modeling for estimating customer churn. So in terms of AI in education, so among the institutions that I interact with, the key application of AI mainly focus on data-driven decisions, such as predicting students at risk. So where machine learning algorithms could be applied to spot students at risk at an early stage so that we can deploy some intervention, right? Well, outside of the formal education system, there are many excellent solutions by the private sectors focusing on personalized learning or adaptive assessments, content curation, or collaborative environment, and intelligent tutoring systems to support the instructors. So basically, under such environments, a computer is given the capacity to perform a variety of human cognitive tasks, including the communication, reasoning, and problem-solving bit of the education.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chung. I appreciate it. Rinat, let's continue with you. How would you define artificial intelligence, similar to what Chung already said, or different as you understand it? Would you please unmute yourself? Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can.
So I will define it very shortly as intelligent expressed by machines, computers, or other non-human agents. Very general. And I really connected to what you said, Chung, and we see it in our everyday life, right? Like my iRobot, recommendation systems, and so on. So this is it. This is how I define the artificial intelligence.
Perfect. Thank you. Daniel, how about you?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. So there are a few ways I think about when it comes to defining and contextualizing AI. I'm going to offer a policy definition as a policy person. So the OECD, that's the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, has put forward that AI, or an AI system, is a machine-based system that can, for a set of human-defined objectives, make predictions, recommendations, or decisions influencing real or virtual environments. And this definition is important because it's helped inspire the newly proposed European Union regulation on AI, and it's being emulated in a number of leading AI countries. But if we break this down a little bit further, we can think of AI at the core as a set of statistical or mathematical techniques, then applied to various domains of computer science, and then implemented across social and economic systems. So statistical techniques, the more familiar, like regression, newer things like deep learning, then they're applied in areas like natural language understanding, image recognition, and then implemented in everything from healthcare, marketing, product recommendation systems, education, of course. And then just a few other things I would emphasize when we're defining. One is that AI is a general purpose technology, a GPT. That means it has these tremendous wide-reaching implications. Two is this current paradigm of AI as compared to the more rule-based approaches, more formulaic approaches in the past. It's machine learning, neural networks, and that means these systems are really good at coming up with predictions. That's what we're hearing about in the news today. That's why we've gotten all this attention. So predicting what you want to buy, what movie you want to watch, what political party you are, whether you'll drop out of high school. You can sort of imagine the positive and negative applications of that. And the last thing to emphasize is that I find it's important to think about AI as part of a socio-technical framework, meaning how it's developed and regulated is part of this ongoing conversation shaped by governments and researchers and the public. So it's not just a set of technologies, it's part of this broader social conversation.
Wonderful. Thank you. I have checked Google Scholar for the term artificial intelligence, and I found that 1927, one author has written about artificial intelligence, 1950, 1948, 1941. So this is not a new term. But can you please tell me why this becomes so kind of like a buzzword? Everybody's talking about AI. If you say AI, you look impressive to people. So maybe Chung, I'll start with you again. What is the reason that this becomes so much popular in every field? We're going to talk about education soon, but in everything that we are saying, why? Even though it has been in existence for many years.
Well, if we take a look at the search trend on Google, right, for artificial intelligence or AI, actually the trends only, the search trend, only increased about 25% over the past few years, which means the search between 2004 when they produced the search trend until today, the search for artificial intelligence and AI is actually rather stable. That means the users' interest in this term is actually quite stable. But For the past 5 years, when we engage with entrepreneurs, investors, and analysts about startup ecosystem, AI seems to be the useful tagline, like a sticker placed by the founders on the companies to give them some measures of differentiation or hype. So that's why we've seen a lot more of the startups using AI as branding, and but we do see some current application of AI that don't live up to the expectations. Well, in any case, AI have been improving in leaps and bounds in the past few years, and with major players like Amazon, Google, Tesla, continuously developing and releasing new AI-enabled products and solutions. Well, these solutions may not be perfect for now, but we have to start somewhere. And also because of the microchips are dropping in prices, and so commoners like everybody, like everyday consumption, like we start to be able to afford some of these solutions.
Right. Rinat, how about you? What is your view on the buzzword? Kind of like everybody's been using this. Is this the same with you? Like you've been obviously, probably you're not studying artificial intelligence only for a few years, but what is the reason that this becomes so popular?
I think that the main reason is that we're using it more and more. And the reason for that is the availability of data. So there was like an explosion, from the days of the internet, there was an explosion of data that is available, and it's really the source of artificial intelligence. Without it, no artificial intelligence can be developed. So I think that once the data was available, the different applications arrived, like Google, for example. And so people became more and more familiar with the term and with the possibility and with the opportunities, right? And and got also curious about what will happen in the future.
Exactly. Perfect. Daniel, would you agree? Do you think that IoTs are the main reason for artificial intelligence becoming so popular in the last 10 years, let's say?
I think the data availability is a huge thing. A couple recent advances technically that sort of unleashed new domains, the natural language processing generation, image recognition again. And so we see things like Microsoft and Google were mobile first or cloud first, and now they're AI first. Right. So there's these prospects for impact, right? That estimates from places like McKinsey Global Institute will put the impact in trillions of dollars annually. I think a percentage point GDP increase. So as you said, it's in every possible space: marketing, dating apps, self-driving cars, international trade. And the other thing that I think has captured attention, in addition to these benefits, are the social and ethical risks. So we've had the lethal autonomous weapons conversation, the labor displacement conversation, now algorithmic bias and how AI intersects with things like inequality and privacy and human rights. So I think these things impacting policy and business decisions and going into the public's attention have made these kinds of changes.
Interesting. When I was doing research on artificial intelligence in the hospitality industry, and I come across with this video from China where the kids go into a school, I think it was a middle school, and there's a facial recognition. Once they're in the classroom, there is cameras everywhere. They detect if the student is attentive or sleeping and sends a report to their parents. I don't really know if that was a real video or is it maybe a prototype or if that is the future. But my next question to you is, do you feel that, even you already described that AI is becoming so popular and you've given us the reasons, which is the availability of data now. Data feeds AI to make it perfect. But my question is that, do you feel that the education industry is utilizing artificial intelligence as much as other industries? And if yes or no, and if no, if there is any room for improvement. This time, Rinat, let's start with you.
So I think that the obvious answer is no. Yeah, we don't see as much AI in education as we see, like we have an autonomous car, right? So we think, oh, wow, if an autonomous car exists, how come we don't see this kind of thing in education? But we do have a lot of research on AI, AI ed, starting from the 70s. But the interesting thing is that it didn't scale up to the general population. So there was a lot of studies, a lot of people working on these kind of things. Neil Afferman, the assessment, BKTs, Bayesian knowledge tracing. There have been a lot of developments, but no scaling up to the market. And I think that there are actually good reasons for that. I will mention an interesting story. So when I was back in 2015, I was in the EDM, Educational Data Mining Conference, which took place, I think it was Madrid. And the keynote was Louis Van Haan, a very well-known computer scientist, established one of the pioneers of crowdsourcing, the founder of reCAPTCHA. He knows a thing or two about artificial intelligence. And he talked about his company that he founded, Duolingo, which is which was it's really an amazing story, because he's not an educator, and yet he managed to found an educational and edtech company that with huge success, very effective. My son is using it to learn French, and he was asked, so he talked about the company. And of course, it was expected, especially in the EDM community, that he uses a lot of AI. And of course, he has the capabilities to use AI. And he said, well, actually, we're not using AI so much. And well, why not? Well, yeah, we did a lot of studies. We're doing a lot of A/B testing, and we actually found that it's not that cost effective. It really doesn't add a lot, which was super interesting for me, because I think it was a very modest statement. I think one of the problems today is that we have many researchers that want to implement, right? Like myself included, what they know, and for example, to simulate a teacher. But the question is it a good idea to simulate a teacher? Will it be beneficial to simulate a teacher? And Louis Van Haan realized that it was not beneficial to simulate some sort of AI into the system of Duolingo. So he just didn't. It was a very simple mechanism. That's what he said. I'm sure that there is some AI inside Duolingo, and that was back in 2015. I'm sure there have been some changes since then. But still, I think it was a very modest declaration and a very good decision. By the way, Ryan Baker, who is one of the founders of the educational data mining field, he wrote back in 2017, I think it was a paper titled Stupid Intelligent Tutoring Systems, Intelligent Humans. And he said that, well, we have been studying educational data mining, and if in particular worked on a mechanism for detecting gaming the system, and a lot of work, a lot of AI work. And at the bottom line, for example, systems like assessment of Neil Afferman, well, in the laboratories, they developed a lot of sophisticated algorithms. They tested it, significant results, published papers. But what scaled up eventually was a very, very simple mastery-based learning system where you when you complete 3 or 4 questions successfully, you can continue to the next level or something like that. So what he said, what he concluded eventually was that maybe the focus shouldn't be really on making the computer itself as sophisticated as a human being, but rather to work more on the element of providing the correct information to the teachers. So the teacher, right, and that could be also done with artificial intelligence, but it's from a different angle. So instead of simulating the teacher, augmenting the teacher.
Right. Okay. Thank you. That's very interesting. Daniel, I would like to continue with you on the same question. Then Chong, I will ask you also the same. But what do you think that the use of AI in education as you observe and research?
Yeah, so I agree with all of those sentiments. It's been underutilized, and there in some cases good reasons. But there's a few reasons this could happen. One, the technical work is very hard. It's hard to get right. We may not want to do all the things we can do. And there's also reasons that big curriculum developers and tech companies would or would not want to adopt these systems, as well as kind of impetus from policymakers. So as a policy person, one of the things that we see in AI discourse in national AI policy strategies, for example, is that education is thought of as an instrumental strategy. So education is how we build more computer scientists. It's how we get more STEM workers. Whereas for transportation, it's how does AI improve transportation? How does AI improve healthcare? So there's this kind of asymmetry where education is just this instrumental field. So I think it hasn't really captured the attention of some of the leading decision makers. And that may be part of why it's not coming out of the technical setting. But yeah, I think intelligent tutoring systems are some of the most developed ideas. So they're essentially trying to reproduce teaching and learning processes in that sort of computerized course. So you take an algebra class and you computerize it, and you provide different content based on student answers and so on. So that's augmenting or potentially replacing teachers. But there's some of this that's changing a little bit. There's a company called Squirrel AI working mostly in China. And I think they're using intelligent tutoring systems probably affecting at least a few million students at this point. And some of the last year, the virtual year under COVID, may be changing some of these dynamics. But education reform is also tricky, and teachers have good reasons to be resistant to kind of ed tech reforms coming in. So uptake is going to be a little tricky. Though I would like to see the field as a whole think through, how would we want to scale? How would we do this thoughtfully? And I haven't seen a ton of that yet. So I also don't see this jumping out in the next few years or anything like that.
Okay, thank you. Chong, how about you? How is that working, at least maybe from Singapore or some of the other examples that you have, the use of AI in education?
Yep. If we differentiate formal education from the vocational training, let's say online training, definitely we are seeing a lot less deployment in formal education like university education. One moment we're talking in class how wonderful this NLP solutions is, and the next moment we go back to our desk replying to our secretary, what are the available slots we have for the next meeting. So it's really manual at a lot of universities over here at least. But for online vocational training, such as like Facebook related training, such as the marketing associate certificate training, and also the recently I just signed up for one of the online dance education program, and all these provided lots of tailored assessment recommendations, curated learning programs. I think these are fantastic programs to be put together, especially during this time, and people have a lot of free time. And these personalized courses, recommendations with learning analytics, gamification features are really helping us to learn a new skill or a new discipline really quickly. And so I think there are differences in the vocational training, which is provided by the sectors, relevant sectors, for example, social media sectors. But in our formal education, we are pretty cautious.
Great, thank you. It's interesting what you have said. It kind of reminded me my days in America. I moved to United States in 1996 as a graduate student. At that time, I remember that we had TOEFL test of English as a foreign language. All international students know what I'm talking about. So I have to, yeah, you did, yeah. At that time, there was a paper-based test. Maybe you remember, you go into the exam hall, you take it for 3 hours, and then you go out and, a month later, you know the result. At that time, I remember that they had CBT, computer-based TOEFL. So that computer-based TOEFL was kind of like we were talking about, among our fellow TOEFL test takers, that how is that different? And I learned there, which you all indicated, that CBT at the time, I guess maybe it was a simple form of AI, because the questions that came to next is depending upon how correct or wrong answers that you give. So I was scared. I said, I'm good, but if I answer a good answer, like correct answer, the next question is going to be more difficult. Then it's going to be more difficult and I will fail miserably. Although they actually had planned some kind of a weight system. So the more difficult the question, the more point, which was kind of like my first, I guess, introduction in AI, the use of AI in education. I want to ask you, do you have, Daniel, you mentioned one company that are using, but do you have any other examples? This is open to all. Whoever would like to contribute can take any other, some examples, maybe good, maybe bad examples of AI in education, maybe some companies or concepts. Anybody?
Sure, I'll start quickly on this. Turn it over. So I do pay attention to intelligent tutoring systems a lot, just because there's an ability to differentiate for students. You could serve thousands, tens of thousands of students, instantaneously. So it's should be easy to scale, low marginal cost. So I pay attention. But I want to point to an interesting example where I am at Georgia Tech. One of our outstanding researchers, professors, Ashok Goel, and his team, they developed what they called a virtual teaching assistant a few years back. And it was able to answer student questions on the online discussion forum, essentially, things like course logistics. And they named this virtual teaching assistant Jill Watson after IBM Watson. And it was so effective that it actually fooled a lot of the students into thinking it was a real human teaching assistant. And they've continued doing this, and now there's 2 or 3 virtual assistants, and they have pseudonyms, and the students try to guess who the fake ones are, and so on. But the interesting piece of this use case is it shows how we could take away some of this menial work. When is the exam? Where do I find the curriculum? Basic questions, and give educators more time to do the high-level creative work, the flexible work. For K-12 educators who don't have any time for professional development, they can have more time to do things like that. So perhaps we can have intelligent tutoring systems, virtual mentors, virtual teaching assistants, walking students through some of these basics, some of these logistics, and the educators have more time to do other things. But of course, there's a risk that that's not how things are actually implemented, and that it will deprofessionalize or displace teachers. But I think this is just a really promising example, not even using very sophisticated AI techniques, just sort of matching questions and answers based on prior year's data. So that's one exciting example.
Which is called chatbots, right? Those are chatbots, I guess.
Yeah, it's a very similar function to a chatbot. Yeah.
Right, okay. Chang, Rina, any other examples that you can give us?
Yeah, sure. So connecting to Daniel's example, so I actually ran a study with a social robot where the social robot assisted a real professor. So she was a professor at the university. It was a course about teaching how to diagnose dyslexia. In a regular classroom, so usually what I'm doing is I go to just a regular classroom to see what's going on. And the students were grouped and work on a case studies of a test, of a dyslexia test. where they had to diagnose together what type of dyslexia the child has. So the teacher moved. So anytime one of the groups had a problem, they raised their hand. The professor moved between the groups and tried to answer the questions. Of course, the only problem was that she was one. They were many groups, and she couldn't really do it. I asked her, okay, so well, I saw some potential here, right? Like there was some kind of a problem. And what are they asking you? Because the robots that I'm working with, well, the state of the art, the truth of the matter is that the state of the art of natural language processing is just not at the level of answering students' questions, especially not in Hebrew. So I asked her, what are they asking you? Well, she said, 90% of the questions are just like repeating themselves. It's like just, right, like there is this case study, it includes 100 pairs of words, and they're asking for each pair, is it that type of mistake or that type of mistake? And then she's answering, and well, it's really rote task for the professor, right? She can do a lot more than that. And then I told her, okay, let's go over all the possible questions. And we just opened a big Excel, and she worked on it. She answered all the questions. Then I recorded her saying all the answers, and I embedded it into the robot. And then when the student worked, each group had a robot, right? Because I have several robots. And when they had a question, they, instead of raising their hand, they worked on a tablet. So that was my way to establish a communication between the students and the robot, because the robot cannot understand what the students are saying. So when they had a question, instead of raising their hand, they clicked on the button, like I have a question, and the robot said the instructor's answer in her voice. They didn't even realize that it was her voice. And it was very effective because now, still, it couldn't answer all the questions, right? It could only answer 90% of the question. But then the instructor had the time to move and between the groups and answer the 10% of the question more deeply. So it was a very nice example, but I wouldn't call it AI, right? It was not really AI. It was very simple rule-based algorithm. I actually do see, I do witness lately a lot of cases of uses of AI in schools. So for example, I know an English teacher, and we live in Israel, so the English is a second language for the kids. And she uses actually Alexa to teach English, and it's a really great exercise. Now, here the NLP and the speech recognition, here the fact that she cannot understand unless you're talking correctly is actually an advantage, because it really forces you. I actually should speak more with Alexa to improve my accent, but it really worked really very engaging for the student, and it's really using AI, but really in an unexpected way, because Alexa was not developed for this kind of purposes. And she has a lot of games and a lot of stories that you can, like select like how they continue and so on, and many games. And so there are lots of opportunities here to practice English, which is very surprising and very, like, it is very creative. It's a very creative use of the tool for educational purposes. Yeah. Another thing that I witnessed, like where I saw AI in education, is like when I look at my son. So my son is learning a lot from YouTubers, and for example, he loves Rober. I don't know if you know him. He's like a great. He used to work in NASA, and he's doing a lot of science experiments. And how did he get, like, how did he find him? I didn't recommend him. I didn't know him. So how did he find it? Well, Google showed him that, oh, look, you might be interested in Mark Rober. And this is like, and so on. And then he met other YouTubers and other websites and so on. And this is all AI.
Exactly.
All AI in the purpose of education.
Great, thank you. Great examples, Rinat. I appreciate it. Chong, do you have any other examples that you want to add that you may have seen or researched, or maybe used?
Yeah, sure. This X Prize, which is Global Learning X Prize, which is launched in 2014, they are challenging teams around the world to create a scalable open source solutions or software that could enable children to teach themselves basic reading, writing, or numeracy in 15 months, right? And we know even today, there are still hundreds of millions of children around the world who cannot read or write. And this is a real issue, right? I think 2 years ago, there are 5 teams who have come up with adaptive solution and gamification solutions for children's learning. And there are actually 5 teams who came up with solutions, and each of them got 1 million to test out the solution, whether they are useful, whether how well they do, and so on and so forth. And if I remember correctly, one of the team is called 1 Billion, which is an NGO. The other one is KickKit, which is quite a popular commercial product already. And the product itself is called To Do Math. It's a math learning app which covers early childhood to 2nd grade with tons of gamification features. If you take a look at the videos, it's really fun, and it adapts to how fast this kid is growing in terms of skills, right? The success of all these solutions proves that children can really teach themselves or each other how to read, write, or do basic math. And by empowering these children with a foundation of literacy can have a huge impact in their lives and can improve their self-confidence, or their aspiration in the future. And this is enabling them to have the same knowledge and resources and opportunities to drive changes, especially for places where education is a privilege.
Great, wonderful. I do have some more questions, but we are also receiving a lot of questions from our audience. So I would like to maybe turn to them, and I would like to ask one of the questions in a little bit different way. So one of our viewers have said that more than 75% of the global population is living in developing nations. How can we popularize AI in the situational scenario? It is not easy. Do you have any supportive ideas? Pros and cons, but I want to add you something to this one. Now, as you know, that we have actually the pandemic has accelerated the use of online education. Basically, when you look at today, if you want to get education, Rinat, in your son's experience, YouTube, right? He needs only one, maybe a device to access YouTube and internet access, broadband, right? And all around the world, developing or developed world, it is the same. So access to information, look at this conference. We are doing it via Zoom. It costs us $14 to get a Zoom account if you want to broadcast more than 45 minutes. If you wanted to not broadcast, just attend, it's even free, right? So last year we had about 150 papers. This year we have 300 papers, double. And the reason is, obviously, it's free, it's online. Rinat, if I invited you to here, to Florida, maybe you would love to come, but it would have cost a lot of time and money. And same thing, Chong, for you. Daniel, it would be easy for you. It's just a simple flight from Atlanta to Sarasota. But we are doing this. So now I'm going to take that question our viewer asked to you as kind of like a negative. So this is AI, developing nations are not going to benefit. But I'm just going to play devil's advocate here. Do you think that AI is going to actually going to even help developing nations to access to education? Anybody want to take on this question?
Yep, just a quick follow-up from the previous example that on the X Prize. This X Prize is actually sponsored by Tesla and SpaceX. With the grand prize is actually 10 million in terms of supporting grant for these solutions. And all five, the amazing part is all five finalists, the solution works, and which proves that there are solutions that is AI based, can enable children to teach themselves basic numeracy and how to read and write within 15 months. And I think this solutions, all five solutions can be rolled out to both developed countries as well as developing countries at a minimal cost, because most of the development R&D cost has been bared by the X Prize, right? So all these solutions are being rolled out by startups and also by NGOs, popular commercial solutions such as To Do Math. So all these are actually at the fingertips of developing country as well. So and the network adoption rate for developing countries has been vastly increasing, and with all these tablets and mobile devices becoming more and more affordable, I think tomorrow is looking pretty bright. Yeah.
Wonderful. Daniel, you want to add on?
Yeah, I'd love to. And I like the way you inverted this question a little bit. So I think there are really interesting positive use cases. There are things that are a little bit lower risk. So if you look at India or Kenya's national AI policy strategies, there are things like using AI for logistics, teacher distribution, intervening on students who are struggling, maybe for teacher preparation. But I do worry a little bit about the kind of history of ed tech in development. People, big philanthropists and tech companies have come in with not well thought out ideas, not well implemented ideas. And I worry in particular that some big companies will come into low income countries and say, hey, you don't have the teacher capacity to educate all these students. We're going to have all these students now sit in a computer lab, and maybe it's better than what you have now, maybe. But now, as a result, we're not going to even bother developing our educational capacity. We're not going to bother professionalizing our teachers. So we're going to have, countries or regions kind of locked into a second-tier educational system. So I think this needs to be done really, really carefully, piloting use cases, starting with lower risk things, and thinking very seriously about the reasons that educational reform is hard. We need, basic infrastructure, roads, electricity, internet access, healthcare, for this to really work.
Interesting. Rinat, anything you want to add to that? It's a pro versus con.
Yeah. I will give one experience that I had back in 2011, I think it was, or 12. I went to Rwanda, and I gave there a workshop for faculty members in medicine. So I taught them how to, and actually it was really very surprising, because it was like a demand from the Rwanda government to move education also to an online format, because they needed more people in the medicine sector, and they didn't have enough facilities, right? So they didn't have enough buildings and enough universities to teach the number of people that they wanted. So they decided to train the instructors to develop online education. It was a very interesting experience, and I think I really connected, Daniel, to what you said. So I really think the secret here is to empower the educators in these countries, as opposed to replace these educators. And I can tell, at least from my experience, that was back in 2012, right? They learned it like in seconds, right? They really managed to develop great online courses, where today, right, where some of the instructors only faced this challenge due to the coronavirus and struggled. So I think we can give more credit also to educators in developing countries and just empower them. And I think that they are welcoming the technology, right? Like just like the Rwanda government welcomed the internet. And I think it is a really great tool and really provides a way to democratize the education, right? Like just like the MOOCs and massive open online courses. I really enjoyed it. When I was a student at Florida State University, I was able to study a lot of, that was really just when it started back in 2011. I took the first, I think it was the first course with Andrew Ng, teaching machine learning and Daphne Koller. And it was great. It was just like, I couldn't have done it without it, because I didn't have at the moment as a PhD student the time to go to another faculty to take course. I could do it at like 6 a.m. in the morning, and that's it. And I was able to do it just because of this availability.
And I agree with you. I'll tell you that University of South Florida, M3 Center in specific, but Mumma College of Business, I am in the Mumma College of Business, that we have just developed a MOOC course just recently on diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. We were so surprised that 135,000 people took this class. It was a great success, and it's really gave a huge access to people from all around the world, not just United States. But we are now, and I'm sure that you are all educators, you taught classes that, let's say that you go into the classroom and then you start talking about a concept and the student raises his or her hand and then ask a question that kind of like make you realize that this student does not know the foundation that you're talking about. Now you have to go back to the foundation, which is going to cost you time and also the cost you the boredom of the students who know what you're talking about, because you don't want to bore. If it is too simple, if you go too, so this is where I actually developed my own simple AI-based system. And then in my online classes, I have leveled my topics, and now I am using a tool called Nomia. Maybe some of you know TechSmith, the company Camtasia. They are using Camtasia Capture, used to have Jing, and they have actually a software called, I just came across with this just recently, about a year ago. Nomia is the name. So Nomia is actually, you can take a video just like this one, okay? If this is, imagine that knowledge transfer. So I'm just telling students about what is hospitality technology applications? What does a hotel use to accept reservations, check people into the room, just as an example. And then you can ask some questions along the way. And if the students do not answer them correctly, it takes them to another video to make it even more simple. So you kind of branch it in a way. So it's, I don't know, what is that called? I don't know if that's you, Daniel, you said stupid intelligence versus artificial. I don't know if that's not maybe even artificial intelligence, but to be honest with you, that has been so successful. What I have observed myself, which I would like to ask you, my question to you is that I transferred some of my transfer of knowledge duties to technology. Let's say tools like Nomia, which is AI-based because it can assess the student based on the questions that you built into the instructional video. So the question that, okay, you already expressed to us what is going on today, but I would like you to take us 10, 15 years to the future. Do you think that this knowledge transfer, maybe not the whole thing, but the knowledge transfer will be fully transferred to AI-based educational systems? Again, anybody, please.
I'll start with a quick no. I think you have, the examples in informal education, YouTube, there's a lot of great things where we're able to transfer this knowledge and embed it and even point people to it. but I'm still cautious about the things like social emotional skills and mentorship. So there are AI systems now that are getting better at affective computing, so they can detect your emotions. Maybe, as you pointed out at the beginning, maybe it's tracking your eye movements and portraying emotion to students even. And students may even be receptive to that, but I think there are things about the social environment and about the specific role of teachers and social emotional development that frankly the AI ed community hasn't studied fully enough. And I doubt that this will be fully transferable or replaceable for quite a long time.
Okay. How about you, Chong, Rinat?
Yeah, I completely agree. Just based on our personal experience, based on these pandemics during past 1.5 years, we've been communicating, working from home on Zoom, right? But we seem to lost touch with all these social connections with our colleagues, right? Every time we just log on to Zoom, we talk about real serious stuff, and then we just move on with life. And I think those small talks before classes, check how the students are doing. How are you? Oh, you're doing okay. These are really important elements to develop that connection with the student, and also among the students as well. They can form study groups, which is a peer support element that is really important among education, especially for teenagers, right? So I think AI would be able to assist us. That means they are supporting us as a tool, right? But it is really difficult to remove all the human elements from education, and we need to be really cautious about it.
You say that it's not even impossible, but it should not be removed, right? That's what I think you're saying.
It should not.
Yeah. Rinat, how about you?
I'm actually, well, I agree, but with everything said, and I also don't think that there is the ability right now, technologically speaking, not now and not in 15 years, to simulate a human teacher. But what I am afraid is that people will try to do it. This is actually scares me more, because I think it's very, I think that people, when attempting to solve this problem of simulating a teacher, they're really failing to understand the level of difficulty of the problem. So because we, as human beings, we look at teachers, they're like, right, we see a lot of teachers, they're regular people. We don't think that they do, like, right, they're not surgeons, they're not like astronauts or something like that. We treat them as regular people. But the truth of the matter is that what they are doing is extremely complicated. And when we look, for example, on autonomous car, we perceive it as more difficult, right? Like we can perceive it as humans as a really difficult task. It can cost life, right? It can cost life. So, and still cars are doing it. So it's really, well, if people can risk that, right, and feel confident enough to let a car just drive on itself, well, of course it's possible to simulate a teacher. Well, I think that it is impossible. And the reason that I think that it is impossible is that we still didn't solve the hard problem of consciousness, because I think that the one of the biggest problem that we don't understand, which has a lot to do with the ability of teachers to do what they do, is their consciousness. So we can maybe have, like zombies, in the philosophical sense, the teachers that can express emotions and detect emotions, and maybe they can do whatever the algorithm is doing, and maybe it will look real. But and I think it's perfectly fine when we're doing things like Daniel, like you were saying, like that the teaching assistants working on the forums. But when we're actually trying to detect a child emotion and respond intelligently, emotionally intelligently, I think that could lead to big problems that I wouldn't want to see the consequences of. And also from a practical point of view, from a computational point of view, I really don't think there is a possible solution, because the artificial intelligence is, like I said before, is really based on training sets, right? Like on data. And I don't think that there is this kind of data when we're talking about education. For the reason that there are not a lot of good, there are a lot of good teachers, but it's really hard, like there are a lot of different teachers. It's not like there is correct answer. Every teacher will do a different thing, and it will really depend on the different child that he's talking to. So even I as a teacher will not, even I as a mother to my children and as a teacher at my university will not respond at the same way to the same situation under different circumstances. So I don't think that there will be even the data set to train this algorithm and this machine. So yeah, that's what I think.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Just to give a quick example, if I may, intelligent tutoring systems that can automate an algebra course, sure. Intelligent tutoring systems that can automate a poetry course or a philosophy course, I'm not sure we're getting there quite yet.
Right, because in geometry, it doesn't change too much, right? It is what it's black and white, but the ones that are gray will be much more difficult. Maybe technically it's not difficult, but from the social perspective, I think it will never replace. We are already out of time, but I want to ask you 1 minute of what is your current research in regards to AI, and maybe some of the stream, like just give us some topics for those of us who are listening to you right now. Maybe they will pick up some topics of research interest from you. Again, Daniel, should I start with you? Is it okay if you're ready? Please tell us what you're researching and what some of the research topics very quickly.
Sure. So I think that the AI ed researchers would benefit from moving into a kind of traditional education policy and other areas of education research. So how many schools and classrooms are using intelligent tutoring systems or adaptive assessments? How many universities are using this to predict dropout risk or assist with college admissions? Is there transparency? Are there safeguards? When we use these systems, are they used the same way in low-income schools and high-income schools, in low-income countries, high-income countries? How do they augment or replace or change the role of teachers or administrators? So taking these technical questions, bringing them back into the realm of implementation and policy and action, I think would be a good way to go.
Wonderful. Chong, do you want to continue, or Rinat, whichever? Yep,
sure. Currently, if we look at the landscape in edtech papers, right? This lack of longitudinal studies that follows the student throughout the life cycle. So if we can really look into this type of studies, it would be really impactful. And the second area that I would like to emphasize is the cross-disciplinary approach that edtech research should take. Well, edtech shouldn't only about the technology, shouldn't be only about the education, but also about the cultural, social, economic, or ethical, psychological dimensions of education.
Wonderful, thank you. Rinat, how about you?
So the thing that I'm interested right now is really, looking at the challenges that we face now. And I mean, I faced these challenges for a long time, but many people started to face these challenges now due to COVID. The ability for self-regulation, self-regulated learning. I'm actually, like I said, I'm a great believer in the capability and the potential of MOOCs. I think they are great. I think though that they should be coupled with something else. Like with social partners, or the thing that I'm actually working on now is to see how it can be coupled with an agent like a robot. So I'm doing studies with robots and I look at how can a robot help you regulate your work alone time, right? So when I, for example, write papers, I use my body here. You see this? It's just like a timer, right? It's nothing. It's not a robot. It has no AI whatsoever, but still the embodiment of it helps me in very interesting ways that I'm really curious to see exactly what they are. And they have also a lot to do with mindfulness, with attention. And by the way, I talked about emotions and I expressed my fear from robots or other things trying to detect emotions. I'm not afraid though that, and I don't think that robots cannot be used to help people deal with their emotions. I do think that it is possible. So my former advisor, Professor Avi Sadeh, who was a psychologist, a child psychologist, and he was an expert in sleeping problems of children. And he, for example, developed an intervention which he called the HPI, which is a huggable puppy intervention. And he used a puppy to calm children. So it was a very short intervention. It was like a 10-minute. It was children who suffered from some kind of a trauma. And they were told that they very short instruction that this puppy is afraid to sleep, and they need to do that and that to help him sleep. And it really helped them. And even though this dog had no intelligence. So I think that by adding a little intelligence, we can do even a little bit more. But still, I think that the secret here is to leave the agency and the control to the human, and not to make the robot like nudge you or something like that. Not exactly like, it still has to feel like I'm controlling it and I'm making him help me, and not he telling me what to do.
And that goes into human-computer interaction research area, which is needed very highly. Also ethical things, as you have mentioned as well. So really it's very, very virgin area, right? We have a lot of need for research in many different aspects, from technology, from social interaction, from ethical considerations, also impact on society. We didn't get to that question, but what's the impact of AI and using robots in jobs, teacher jobs, etc. But we are out of time. I really would like to thank Daniel, Chang, and Rinat, all of you, for your expertise and sharing your knowledge with us, the audience. And as you know, that this is streamed on YouTube. So since Glossar is a global conference, not many people can make it during this time, but I know that they will be watching later. And I thank you again for being part of this panel. And I also would like to thank all of our audience today, live audience, for their questions and participation. And I also would like to tell you that the Glossar conference will continue now with concurrent sessions. Please feel free to go to glossar.org and see all the list of the sessions that are taking place, which is exciting. And then we'll have another panel tomorrow. Again, Rinat, Chong, and Daniel, thank you.
Thank you
so
very
much.
much. Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you. Have a nice day. Yep. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.